Hey guys, we are back for round 2 in the spinal cord. Last time we met, we went over the protection of the spinal cord. So we looked at the bony protection, the meninges, as well as the cerebrospinal fluid. Then we looked at the gross anatomy of the spinal cord, and we did a cross section of it, and that's where we had basically finished. We did that cross section. Now, what I want you guys to remember from last time is that there are 31 spinal cord segments. And from each segment, there was a pair of nerves, a pair of spinal nerves. So 62 spinal nerves total. And what we're going to do today is we're going to start talking about those spinal nerves. But we got to have an idea of what a nerve is, just like in general. So check this out. Right up here, I got a single axon, okay? Single axon right there. And that single axon has Schwann cells on it. We can see those nice Schwann cells right there. And there they are, creating the myelin sheath, of course. Now, around the Schwann cells is a connective tissue wrapping called the endoneurium. And what I've got here is just a whole bunch of axons and their endoneuriums. And the endoneurium of one axon will grab onto the endoneurium of another. So the endoneurium helps bundle and bunch axons together. And this bundle of axons is called a fascicle. Means like a little stick. And we surround this fascicle with a slightly thicker, bigger layer of connective tissue. So it's dense connective tissue for all the connective tissues we'll do here, but they're going to get thicker and stronger and tougher as we go outward. This connective tissue around a fascicle, around a bundle, is called the perineurium. So endoneurium, then perineurium. And now what I've got here, so I've got one fascicle, 2, 3, 4 fascicles, plus an artery and a vein. And that combo is finally wrapped by a really strong layer of connective tissue called the epineurium. The epineurium. And that is what a nerve is. It is this bundle of axons. So we got a bunch of bundles together with a blood vessel pair, okay? 3 investments of connective tissue. Epi on the outside, peri a little deeper, and then endo around the individual axons. So that is what a nerve is made out of. And what we are going to do is look at spinal nerves today. So let's get to it. All right. Here is my spinal cord right here. I know that motor axons are coming out the front of my spinal cord. These guys right here are bundles, like small bundles of axons. These guys right here are called ventral rootlets. So ventral rootlets, these guys right here. Small bundles of axons. The ventral rootlets are going to be motor. So they're going out. Remember, motor things are efferent. Remember, dorsal afferent, ventral efferent. Sensory afferent, motor efferent. Don't forget that, okay? So in the back here, I've got bundles of axons as well. These guys would be sensory. And these small bundles of axons are called dorsal rootlets. Now, as you can tell, the dorsal rootlets are going to unite to make a dorsal root. The ventral rootlets are going to unite to make a ventral root. The dorsal root then has a swelling on it called the dorsal root ganglion. That swelling is where I'm going to find the somata of my sensory neurons. So sensory somata, the cell bodies of sensory neurons, are in that dorsal root ganglion. Okay, that swelling right there. If I backtrack for a second, let me backtrack slides for a moment. Whoops, bear with me here, backtracking, there we go. Last time we met, we talked about how sensory neurons have their axons going into the dorsal horn of the cord. Well, these are unipolar neurons. So the axon goes along, and the axon passes by the cell body. The cell body of the sensory neuron is in this swelling right here, which is called the dorsal root ganglion. Okay, we got a dorsal root and its ganglion in the back, a ventral root, no ganglion there, in the front. Those two combine, and this structure right here is a spinal nerve. The combination of the dorsal root and the ventral root yields a spinal nerve. Now, the dorsal root is utterly sensory. The ventral root is totally motor. So the spinal nerve is going to be mixed. It's a combo of the two. And so I have a spinal nerve coming out on this side and out on this side. And that is going to happen 31 times in the spinal cord. We're going to get 31 dorsal roots, 31 ventral roots, pairs, on each side, okay? And they're going to form the 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Okay. Once the spinal nerve comes out, very quickly it branches. There's a branch towards the back and a branch towards the front. The branch towards the back is called the dorsal ramus, literally the back branch. The branch to the front is called the ventral ramus, literally the front branch. Now, as we're going to notice, the ventral ramus is going to be more important because there's not that much stuff behind a spinal cord. Think about where the spinal cord is. There's not that much stuff behind it, right? So the ventral ramus is going to be more key. Okay, those are my two branches of my spinal cord. The dorsal ramus is all about the posterior trunk. So the back of your back. Muscles there, sensory information in your skin there. That's the job of the dorsal ramus. Sending commands to the muscles in your posterior trunk, taking information from receptors in your skin. All right, that's the dorsal ramus. The ventral ramus is going to also be doing motor and sensory signals. So we got this ventral ramus down here. Motor and sensory signals. But now we're going to the anterior trunk, so the front of your trunk. And again, by trunk, I mean, chest, abdomen, all right, thorax, abdomen, that sort of thing. Plus, the ventral ramus is also all about the limbs. So ventral ramus, anterior trunk and limbs, sensory and motor signals. Dorsal ramus, posterior trunk, sensory and motor signals. Okay. If I look at this picture here, oh, it's a beautiful picture. Check this out. Right here, I got my ventral horn. Look at that ventral horn right there. There's my ventral root. I'm going to leave it on the ventral root. There's my dorsal root right there. Dorsal root ganglion is right there, okay? Maybe I should make that one a different color. Let's undo that one. Let's make that one. Let's go purple. There we go. Dorsal root ganglion right there. The spinal nerve is right here where those two guys meet. So right there, that is the spinal nerve. Now it is branching quickly to give me a dorsal ramus to the back. Look how it's going to the muscle in the back and the skin in the back. That's the job of the dorsal ramus. Now we also have a ventral ramus. We can see the ventral ramus right here. That ventral ramus is heading out, out, out. It's going to go to these muscles here, the skin as well. And also, depends on the level of the spinal cord, but also to the limbs. So we can see both the dorsal and the ventral ramus here and start to get an idea about where they're going. Okay, the ventral ramus has these branches here called rami communicantes, so communicating branches. And these guys are going to carry autonomic nerve fibers. So these guys are going to have nerve fibers that are going to things like cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands. We're going to ignore these for now, but when we do the autonomic nervous system, we'll come back to them, okay? All right, cool. All right, now what we're going to do is talk about what happens to those ventral rami. Earlier we said ventral rami go to the anterior trunk and to the limbs. All right, the ventral rami, almost all of them do the same thing, except for a group from T2 to T12, so 11 of them. T2 to T12. When I say T2 to T12, I'm referring to those ventral rami from those spinal cord segments and those spinal nerves. Now those guys, those ventral rami, become what are called intercostal nerves, which are going to go between the ribs. And that's where we're talking about that anterior trunk there, okay? So T2 to T12, the ventral rami, the front branches of the spinal nerve, they are going to go and become intercostal nerves, which are going to deal with that anterior trunk for us. The other ventral rami, so I'm talking C1 to C8, I'm talking, C1 to T1, almost forgot, T1, C1 to T1, L1 to L5, S1 to S5, etc. Those guys form these bundles of nerve fibers, and these bundles of nerve fibers are called nerve plexuses. We're going to have 4 major nerve plexuses: cervical plexus, brachial plexus, lumbar plexus, sacral plexus. And these guys are all about the limbs. That's their primary function, okay? Sensory and motor info to the limbs. Okay. Doing a lot of anatomy here, I know. Hopefully you're with me. Let's keep going. We're going to start with the cervical plexus. Okay. These blue guys right here, these are the ventral rami from spinal nerves C1 through C4. I always remember C1 through C4 gets me out the door. That's how I start. That's my cervical plexus right there. It's first, C1 through C4 gets me out the door. Okay? These ventral rami are going to form this mess right here. I'm going to put a circle around the mess. Put a green circle around the mess. That's an arrow. I didn't want an arrow. I want to draw. This mess right here is the cervical plexus. That mess of nerve fibers where they like come together and go apart, that net. Plexus means net. That is called the cervical plexus. Eventually what's going to happen is nerves are going to come out of this net. And these nerves have names. We're not going to learn all these names, guys. All right, you can probably figure out some of them. Lesser occipital nerve. You can probably figure out where that one's going. Greater auricular. Let's go into the ear. Auricular means ear. Supraclavicular, right on top of the clavicle. We're not doing any of those. We got to know one of the nerves coming out of the cervical plexus. That nerve coming out of the cervical plexus is called the phrenic nerve. Big, beautiful nerve right here. The phrenic nerve is going to go to this muscle right here. Do you know what this muscle is? Can you tell me what that muscle is? Shout it out. That muscle right there is, do you have it yet? If I give you 3 letters, you should get it. There we go. It is the diaphragm. Don't forget that silent G. The diaphragm. The diaphragm, of course, is going to contract when you breathe in, relax when you breathe out. It is signaled and controlled by the phrenic nerve. That is the only nerve we're going to know from the cervical plexus. The cervical plexus is this net of fibers from the ventral rami of C1 to C4. C1 to C4 gets you out the door. We get a bunch of nerves coming out of that cervical plexus, but the only one we're doing is the diaphragm. Okay. Awesome. With that, we're done with the cervical plexus. All right, cervical plexus was C1 to C4. That got me out the door. C5 to T1, and I'm halfway done. Because C5 to T1 is my brachial plexus. And I know there's 4 plexuses, so C5 to T1, I'm halfway done. All right, C5 to T1, I got my rami here. There we go, my ventral rami. And we can see C4 is doing a little intermingling. Our naming is not totally perfect as we group things here. It's not totally perfect, but that's okay. So I got ventral rami, C5 to T1, forming this collection right here. This collection right here is called the brachial plexus. Your textbook will go in a lot of detail. It'll name all sorts of things besides the rami. It'll talk about trunks and divisions and cords. We're not doing that. We're jumping all the way to the nerves. There's a bunch of important nerves that come out of the brachial plexus, and they are all going to your arm. Check them out. Axillary. Well, you can probably figure out where that one's going. Armpit, shoulder region. Musculocutaneous. Well, muscle and skin, but that doesn't tell me too much. Radial, I know that's the thumb side of my forearm. Ulnar, that's the pinky side of my forearm. And then median must be in the middle. Okay, let's look at some of these guys. Oh, by the way, we can see the brachial plexus up here. In fact, if you were to turn your head like this guy is doing right here, so turn your head like to the side, and then find this muscle on your neck. See this muscle right here? It's called the sternocleidomastoid, that muscle right there. Find it. And then as you find it, kind of get your fingers in that hollow region right there. And you might, I can feel it on me, I can feel like strings in my neck. Right in there. That's where you're going to find the brachial plexus. All right. So let's talk about those nerves. First nerve we got to know out of the brachial plexus is the axillary nerve. Axillary armpit under the shoulder. Sensory info from the shoulder. Motor commands to the big shoulder muscle, the deltoid muscle. So that's the axillary nerve. Think axillary armpit, shoulder. Sensory from the shoulder. Motor commands to your big shoulder muscle. What's your big shoulder muscle? Your deltoid. Fantastic. Median nerve. Okay, median nerve is going to run kind of down the middle, okay? And imagine you're going down the middle of your arm and down the middle of your forearm to your palm, okay? It's going to go to the lateral. It's going to get sensory info from the lateral palm. So the median nerve is the lateral palm. Median nerve is lateral palm. Plus, I like to remember that it's in the middle of my forearm right here. So when I think about the middle of my forearm, you have a lot of meat in that anterior forearm, palm forward, right? You have a lot of meat in there. Flex your wrist towards you, you'll feel those flexor muscles in there. So your median nerve is going to go to a lot of those wrist flexors, plus your thumb muscles. So if you were to flex your wrist, like you're telling someone to come here, but kind of make a fist and give a thumbs up, and then bang that flexed fist on whatever table or desk or wherever you have handy with a thumb up. You're using your median nerve, okay? Because I'm putting my thumb up, I'm flexing my wrist, I'm using those muscles in the meat of my interior forearm, and then I'm banging my lateral palm on my desk. All right, that's my median nerve right there. Kind of a lot going on, but, break it down, chunk it, do it bit by bit. Okay, next up, musculocutaneous. Musculocutaneous. All right, so sensory info from the lateral forearm and motor commands to some big muscles. The biceps brachii right here. This guy has a ridiculous biceps brachii. And then in the middle of your arm right there is a muscle called the brachialis. You don't see the brachialis on like most average folks, but this guy has a nice brachialis. So biceps brachii, brachialis, musculocutaneous. If you ask a kid to make a muscle, what are they going to show you? They're going to show you their biceps brachii. They're going to flex their elbow. And they're going to show you that biceps brachii. So that biceps brachii, that make a muscle is from your musculocutaneous nerve. And so is his neighbor, the brachialis. And now when you make a muscle, you can kind of put your lateral forearm against your biceps brachii. Like if you bend your elbow, like say you're going to use a hammer, think about the way you hold a hammer and bend your elbow in that top position as if you're holding a hammer and you're really flexing that muscle for some reason. You get that lateral forearm right against that muscle. And so the musculocutaneous, the cutaneous part is sensory info from that lateral forearm, which if you bend your elbow, you can bring it near your biceps brachii. Okay, cool. So you got 3 down, 2 more to go. Next up, the radial nerve. Radial nerve is all about the back, posterior arm, posterior forearm, posterior hand. Okay? It is also, that's a sensory component. So radial towards the back. Okay? The muscles it's going to the triceps brachii. She has really nice developed triceps brachii right there. Nice horseshoe right there that we can see. Triceps brachii are in the back of your arm. Your wrist extensors are in the back of your forearm. And then there's also this big muscle. We see it on Rafael Nadal here. That big muscle right there is your brachioradialis. It's the only thing that doesn't really work with my back, my posterior thinking here. It's the only thing that you got to add extra. It's like don't forget about the brachioradialis. Okay? Also, I used to think about it this way. The radial nerve is all about the T-web. Triceps brachii is the T. Wrist extensors is the W-E. And brachioradialis is the B. Okay. I know these muscle names are a lot. One thing here, as you're learning these, we are going to be learning all these muscle names later on when we're doing the muscle labs, okay? So the more you get them into your head now, the better off, the easier things will be later. All right, last up. Last up, guys. The ulnar nerve. So medial hand fingers, motor command to a wrist flexor, as well as the intrinsic hand muscles. Intrinsic hand muscles are muscles that could keep your fingers together. So like if you were holding a pencil between your fingers, imagine a pencil is going between these fingers, and you're holding that pencil, and somebody's trying to pull that pencil out. Or you want gravity to make that pencil drop. Okay, your intrinsic muscles of your hand and your fingers will let you hold a pencil just between your index and your middle finger. So, ulnar nerve, medial hand and fingers, motor commands to wrist flexor and intrinsic hand muscles. You want to test somebody's ulnar nerve, you can have them hold a dollar bill, maybe a $20 bill, between just their index and their middle fingers, and you try and snatch it away from them. That is how you'll test your ulnar nerve. Okay? All right. That's it for the brachial plexus, guys. C1 to C4 got us out the door. That was cervical. C5 to T1, we're halfway done. That was the brachial. And we started at C5. Well, how many nerves did we just do? Axillary, musculocutaneous, median, radial, ulnar. It's 5. We started at C5 and we did 5. So remember from earlier, T2 to T12 is all about the thorax, okay? The intercostal nerves. So we're not going to have a plexus for T2 to T12. So if we have a ventral ramus from T2 to T12 like we do here, this ventral ramus here is going to become intercostal nerve, which is going to carry motor commands to trunk muscles, sensory information from your trunk skin. All right, that was pretty easy. That was T2 to T12. Now we got to do the last two plexuses. The lumbar plexus and the sacral plexus. Sometimes some anatomy books will group them together and say lumbosacral. Okay? We're going to separate them here. I think it's a little easier to separate them. Hey, remember, C1 to C4 got us out the door? Well, we're doing L1 to L4. L1 to L4 is what we're doing now. Okay? L1 to L4 is going to be your lumbar plexus. And we see the lumbar plexus, this mess right here. We are going to do 2 nerves from the lumbar plexus. That's it. The obturator nerve and the femoral nerve. Notice that the femoral nerve is fairly big, coming down parallel to the femur. The obturator nerve is kind of smaller, goes through the obturator foramen, and hits that medial thigh. All right. The femoral nerve is going to go and get sensory info from a lot of your thigh, your leg, and your foot. Mostly in the front. Femoral's in the front. Okay? F's go together. And in the front of your thigh, you have this group of muscles called your quadriceps femoris. These are ridiculous. Tom's quadriceps femoris here. 1, 2, 3. How come it's called quadriceps if there's only 3? Well, one of them is deep. These are the muscles that are going to straighten your knee. So anytime you get up and you straighten your knee, you're using your quadriceps femoris. People often say your quads when they're talking about your quadriceps femoris. They are controlled by your femoral nerve. Okay. That's good. Let's get rid of that arrow up there. All right, obturator nerve. We said earlier it comes through that obturator foramen and goes to that medial thigh. All right, sensory info from the thigh, that makes sense. Plus motor commands to adductor muscles. To adductor muscles. Okay, let's say there was a guy. There he is. He's just standing. Actually, he's not just standing. He's standing on one leg. He is incredibly flexible too. And what he is going to do, he is going to bring that leg in this way. Bring that leg in towards the midline. That movement is known as adduction. That movement is called adduction. Okay? And our adductor muscles are on the inside of our thigh. The inside of our thigh. Because we're bringing our thighs in, muscles are usually where the movement is. Muscles are where the motion is. So this obturator nerve goes to the medial thigh. The medial thigh muscles will move the thigh medially. That's adduction. So these muscles are adductors. They're adducting your hips. If you want to really know where your adductors are, go and take a break right now and give me like 50 lunges. Go do 50 lunges. And I'm betting your adductor muscles will probably be sore tomorrow. Those inner thigh muscles. All right, cool. That's good. We just did the lumbar plexus, L1 to L4, right? Now let's do the sacral plexus, sometimes lumbosacral, L4 to S4. Look at the theme we have, the fours. Lumbar and sacral, L1 to L4, L4 to S4. It's all about the fours. Lumbar and sacral is all about the fours. We see the ventral rami from L4 to S4. We see the mess that they create. The mess that they create is going to be the sacral plexus. From the sacral plexus, we're going to discuss 3 nerves. The gluteal nerves, which as you can probably guess, go to the gluteal region, the butt region. The sciatic nerve, which is this super big nerve going down the back of your thigh, splitting to give you a bunch of branches in your lower leg. And then the pudendal nerve, quite possibly the worst name for nerves ever. Pudendal means of the pudendum, which was the anatomical term, and I kid you not when I say this, for the, I haven't even told you why I'm kidding you not. Pudendal means of the pudendum, and pudendum is like an old anatomical term for the female external genitalia. So we're talking labia, clitoris, mons pubis. And the word pudendum means the thing to be ashamed of. And I kid you not when I tell you that, which is just ridiculous and terrible and horrible. And that word is no longer used quite as much, but the word pudendal kind of persists. needs to be replaced, definitely. All right, anyhow, let's talk about some of these nerves. Sciatic nerve is the first one we're going to do. Whoops. Sciatic nerve is going to be this big nerve. Comes down the back of your thigh, goes down the back of your leg, gives off some other branches towards the lateral part of the leg as well. Big guy in the back of the thigh. Well, the big muscles in the back of the thigh are going to be the hamstrings. These guys right there are the hamstring muscles. If you touch your toes, you can stretch your hamstring muscles. Now, they're also going to other muscles in the lower leg and the feet, plus getting a lot of sensory information, especially from the back of the thigh and the leg here. That is the sciatic nerve. Sciatic means basically of the hip because it comes down right past that hip bone, hip joint. All right, gluteal nerves. Gluteal nerves are going basically to the muscles of the butt, which the big one is the gluteus maximus. And then there's one called the gluteus medius, which is an abductor muscle. So the gluteus medius is the muscle in your butt that you would use. So drawing a person again. Da-da-da. Give them some arms, give them a leg, and that, I don't know what just happened there. Let's undo that. Let's give them a body. Give them one leg, and the other leg is out like that. So to get that other leg out like that, you would use an abductor muscle, which is one of your gluteal muscles. So that's the gluteal nerves. Pretty straightforward, I think, I hope. And with that, we got one more to do, the pudendal nerve, which I said is going to be involved in the external genitalia, both for men and women. So for women, external genitalia, we're talking labia, clitoris, mons pubis. For guys, we're talking penis and scrotum. And so we're getting sensory information from those structures, plus motor commands that are going to the sphincter muscles. So sphincter muscles are circular muscles. Here is an external anal sphincter muscle around the anus. Here's an external urethral sphincter muscle around the urethra. And we see it in the female as well. External urethral, external anal sphincters. These are obviously what are going to prevent us from going to the bathroom when we got to go to the bathroom, but we don't want to go to the bathroom. So that's the motor part of the pudendal nerve. All right. Fantastic, guys. We are done with the spinal cord, which is just really good. I'm happy about that. Next up, we're going to do more nervous system, and then muscular system. All right. It's been awesome as always. I'll see you guys next time.